Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm having some technical difficulties right here. Give me a hot second. Hot second. Give me a minute, bro. Give me a minute. I'm still trying to work it right here, D. What's going on, brother?
Chilling, man.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to do it from phone. My computer acting up, man. It won't let me on, man. So I had to do it from my phone, man. So I'm trying to maneuver from my phone, man. How's that day? How the rest of that day for you, brother?
Man, it ain't too bad, man. Just chilling.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, brother.
Just
Chilling is
chilling, man.
always, yeah,
That's
man.
my number one thing. To chill.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, bro. Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. I'm just sitting up here trying to get some things, man. Just give me a hot second, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Let's see. Yeah, man. I'm just trying to get it together, brother.
Yeah.
It's,
Chris should be coming on here.
yeah, man. I'm trying to see what's going on, man, with this computer, man. It's man made, so it's always gonna have some technical difficulties, man.
Right.
Yeah,
Anything
man.
being made. You know how it go.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So give me like I said, forgive me, man. I'm over here. I don't know. Did you talk to? You say you talked to Chris?
Yeah, I had talked to him early today. I want to say a couple hours before 8.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to get some stuff going, man. It's doing it, man. You had a rough day, brother. You had a long day or what day?
Man, it was one of them days I was glad that it was over. Tell you that
Mm,
much. I'm
mm,
glad it's over with, man.
I know that's right. Yeah, man. I'm just trying to. I don't know what's going on with this computer, man. That's what I'm sitting there trying to figure out what's going on with it, man.
What is it doing?
I just tried to trying to try to get it going, man, and it's just let's see. There go brother RJ. Yeah, what's going on, brother RJ?
Oh, not a whole lot, brother. Figured I'd check in and get in on the conversation this evening, man. It's always a pleasure talking to like-minded brothers. You know what I mean?
Already, what's
Absolutely.
going on, man? How was your day?
Oh, it was great, my friend. I slept most of it. Something I must have needed because I typically can't sleep in the daytime. But boy, I
Mm,
slept like a baby today.
that's
And
good.
yeah, I was telling him, bro, RJ, I got some technical difficulties over here, man. My laptop over here acting a donkey a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah, don't wanna it don't wanna act right, man. I don't know what's going on with it, man.
Old technology.
Mm.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Technology. Let me see. Yeah, miss some ain't that why is that like that? Yeah, man, but yeah, we talked about oh, and by the way, shout out to Frankie and Johnny. You know what I mean? So really appreciate you there, Frankie and Johnny. But yeah, RJ, let's slide right into it real quick, man. You know, as we spoke about, man, how we was talking about how, you know, how can we prepare our youth for modern day society, man. You know, and you know that subject is really very important, man, when it comes to a lot of things because we see a lot of them that don't have that type of guidance and don't have that type of you know, when we preparing, you know, even talking to our own or either talking to the young generation from even when they're in their 20s or you know, even sometime even 30s, you know, because they're still younger. But you know, some of them don't have a clue of what they want to do in life because nobody ever had that conversation with them. You know, some people the time the time can make up for what um you know, just buying them everything versus really giving them some nuggets and something that they can really use after they leave the house, or maybe God forbid something would happen to that their role model or even someone that they admire. You know what I'm saying? It don't necessarily have to be a parent. It can be an uncle. It can be a brother. It can be, you know, a great friend that might be a little older that can share information with you that what they have went through in life. Um, you know, that can be a major part also. So, I mean, what would you say about that, brother? Or either brother D, man. Either way, man. It you know, however
Well,
anybody wants to start it out.
well, I do have some thoughts on that, man, because there are plenty of things that we can do that we really don't think about, especially in this modern day and age where this newer generation thinks they know everything. We tend to back down too fast
Mm,
and allow them that latitude to run into that wall when maybe we should nudge a little harder at times. Maybe we should attempt to extend that conversation so that they truly understand, the ramifications of their actions, or what direction that's headed to in the future. You see, at our age, we pretty much have the blueprint to the troubles we've had,
mm,
and if you got the blueprint to the troubles, then you have a route around the troubles. You know what I mean?
mm.
My mother said something, man. She used to tell us when we was kids, bruh. I found myself repeating it to my kids, and I've heard my kids tell my grandkids. A hard head make a soft ass. You know what I mean?
Right,
Right on.
Back
right, right.
back in our day, that meant if you broke the rules, there was a repercussion. That repercussion usually came in the form of a leather belt, a wooden switch, something that was gonna put you back on the straight and narrow, because that
Correct.
was their way. But if we look at society, man, violence has increased somewhat since we were kids, man. You got
Absolutely.
you got you got kids walking around here now, because they think they're grown, because they're enduring a struggle. You know, they're doing all kind of nutty stuff because we somehow in generations past forgot that the struggle was important. You know what I mean? It's important. It teaches you how to live, and more importantly, it teaches you how you don't want to live. You know what I mean? But at their age, they haven't endured that. They've only seen what they've seen out of their parents, or what they see on TV, or what they reckon with on social media, and that's what's shaping their lives now. And
Yeah.
I agree with that
I
too.
I've even got to admit, with my 19-year-old daughter, man, conversation is not what it really should be. You know what I mean? I talk to her about civic engagement, because when it comes down to it, you can live your life the way you want to live your life, or the way you think you're living your life, and not pay attention to what's going on with you, what's going on in your community civically, and never understand that that's what's shaping your life or your troubles. You know what I mean? Your opportunities. So we've got to get back to talking to these children about their civic engagement, man, from young ages. You know what I mean? From young ages. We stopped doing that. I look at my friends and other folks that I know, and one thing that strikes me is that very few of them ever want to have a conversation regarding politics or voting or, who's doing what for the community. It's, well, man, I get up and I go to work. When I get home, I don't want to hear that shit. You know.
Right.
But when we think like that, we place everything in jeopardy. And right now we see it's our children. And it's not only that, but others see that opportunity in our children. Look at what's going on right now. They're writing policies in states all across the nation that have names that are they have names that will suggest that they are very helpful or are going to be rewarding to the citizens. But when you read down into it, they are taking things away. CRT. CRT has become a focal point of conversation with some of these folks. But what we're not understanding or what we're not, mobilizing and engaging about is that they're targeting our children because they understand we're not talking to them about civic engagement. Okay. So they're not going to teach them about civic engagement. And as a matter of fact, let's teach them that their history was peaches and cream. That way they don't come at us on a civic level.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we've lost that in generations because we've seen, folks more focused on me, my car, my house, what I look like, this gold chain, these Jordans, I'm the man.
All because of what society painting.
That's right. And that when that translates to our children, then it's a me society and not a us society. It used to be it takes a village to raise a child.
Right. I remember that.
Say something to somebody's child right now. Okay. So it went from a village to a hut. And where's our power now? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Where's our power now? We've given it up.
Brother. I didn't mean to cut you off, brother. Hey, I want to welcome my brother Strick, bro. I'm sorry, man. He just came in, man. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Hey, welcome, brother
Strick.
Welcome, brother Strick.
What's going on? What's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot, man. That's the work day and a night off tonight.
Hey, that'll work. Ain't nothing wrong with that, bro. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yes, sir, man.
Yeah, but I just Strick, I don't know if you saw the title, man, and finally you gentlemen get to speak, because I told you y'all speak on the same wavelength when it comes to a lot of things about civil engagement and stuff like that. But I want to ask you, brothers, I didn't mean to cut you off, bro, Jay, but somebody just came to my mind real quickly, man. Do you and we kind of touched on that subject a minute, and me and D and brother Strick, man, is when as far as the resources that they have now, because the engagement when it comes to things is like, even with socializing, we had to actually do a face-to-face. Now everything is based on social media, online, messenger, all these type of resources that they have that we didn't have, back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Now that it can be like you said, it could be a pro and a con, that they can use that, you know what I'm saying? And I know you guys can elaborate on that, man. And like I said, I just find it, it was funny thing that when we go meet up with people, we had to meet people at venues, or we had to meet people at dances, or even at basketball courts, football fields, different type of atmosphere like that, versus
being on the platform and texting each other and instant messaging each other. Yeah, you're right. It's different.
It plays a different part, you know, when it comes to that, man. You know, so I just find it, you know, like I said, it has its pros and its cons, man. When it comes to that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, but
Yeah.
gentlemen like to, you know, talk about that, man. I mean, it's just certain things that just come in. Like I said again, brother RJ, I don't usually cut, but it just kind of popped in my head, man.
Hey, bro, but you know that's a part of it, and that's why we need to have these conversations. You know, one of the tougher things in the world is sitting down and trying to relate somebody to somebody younger than you. But
Mm.
sharing those experiences are important because sharing those experiences tells them what's ahead. Now, we might not think they listen, but they do. You know, it's the fact that, you know, we see the stubbornness and the straight back of this generation, and like generations before, it's a little bit alarming. Okay, to us, it's a little bit alarming. We don't understand some of the things about this generation, but we got to understand that this generation is a little more advanced than us.
Brother RJ,
And to be, yes, sir.
I know I got my neighbor Jesse. He's part of that generation right there. 26.
Uh-huh.
26. He's
Right.
here. Usually sits
And
in, so you know.
Good to know that.
Might have a
But
question.
yes, sir.
No, I said he might have a question.
Oh, okay. Anytime. So
Well, you might have one yourself. Because
say again.
These younger generation is not easy, definitely.
Oh, that's right.
And we don't know.
Right.
They're smarter than we are in many senses because of technology, and then dumber than we are in many senses. Excuse my French, brother, but I gotta call a spade a spade.
Be yourself, my
They're
man.
dumber than they are because of technology. Because what we had the advantage of was discernment. We had the ability to look at things from what we could see and be able to engage in a situation. They can't engage with each other, not like we do. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're completely right on that. They don't engage with each other like we do because they're desensitized by social media and electronic gadgets.
Yeah,
you know,
Jesse said
one of the things you see out of people in our generation that are detached on social media is that keyboard warrior thing. They immediately go to anger when it's something they don't understand, or a viewpoint or opinion that's differing from theirs. You know, so you get the keyboard warrior when in a face-to-face conversation that would be completely different. You know, so these screens has the younger generations a lot more set back from each other.
Hey, Mr. RJ.
Yes, sir.
Here you got somebody. He got an opinion about what you just talked about his generation, because you know that's what we're trying to get.
Yeah,
that's right.
My generation, we lack a lot of physical communication that y'all had. We lack that. So in a lot of ways, we are different. And we make, like my generation, make a lot more mistakes because of that issue. And like y'all say, technology. Yeah, technology is something.
Okay. So young man, this I would say this. I agree with you. But should that be a hindrance to us, or can we turn that around into something positive and more powerful for us?
So it just take one. It can definitely be done.
Right. So one of the first things I'll admit is that the younger generation is way more savvy when it comes down to this computer generation and this computer age.
Right.
These kids are so smart when it comes down to these computers and how to deal with that. Now, here's where the pairing needs to happen. The wisdom of the older generation needs to be able to reach out and learn from a younger generation, just like we are asking them to learn from us.
Right.
And that is where the older generation has the disconnect. It is so hard for someone 50, 60 years old to turn around and admit that they need to learn something from a 20-something.
We can learn from each other then, huh?
That's not just a child. That is an adult.
Then we can learn from each other, I believe, right?
That is correct. That is correct. A chain is only strong as its weakest link.
What you just said might be the key to it. You know, what the connection is that what they find out and what they know, man, we're pretty slow on computers, of course. I think I am, shoot. But technology and wisdom and the connection of technology and wisdom. The kids to the technology.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an excellent point, brother.
Yes, and you know, you notice that I put the onus on the older generation first. We have got to back up and be able to accept that we need to learn something from this younger generation. The world has moved on from what we knew. The world has moved on from the way we grew up. That's a thing of the past. We can long for it all we want to, but it's never going to come back again. 115 is already passed. We won't see 115 till 115 comes around again. Okay, but that ship has sailed. We got to learn from this younger generation so that we can navigate this world to be able to share our wisdom with them. You know what I'm saying? And on the same note, the younger generation, the disconnect for them, and I'll put a lot of this on the separation of the pandemic. It had to happen. It had to happen. But again, the political environment changed the way that it should have been. Okay. We had divisions sown because we were separated physically.
What do you mean by that, buddy?
Okay. So when the coronavirus got really bad, a lot of people were put out of work. People were made to stay home. You couldn't go to bars and restaurants. A lot of the social circles were broken during COVID. For adults, not so bad a thing. We have learned that as you evolve into an adult, the greater part of your adult life is spent working. So when you're given that time off, at times that can be a blessing. It gives you time to catch up on other things. It takes a period of time for it to have a hard effect on you. Whereas with the children, when they lose their social relationships, those school connections, those teachers, those things that are helping to shape them day to day, and then they're forced to a computer screen, that changes them mentally. And when we don't have them conversations with them, man, it can get bad. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm going through it with my 19-year-old daughter, you know, as she transitioned through this, because she was in high school through the lockdowns and all of that, you know. And as a matter of fact, the year she was supposed to graduate from high school, they didn't even have a graduation because of the pandemic. So that changed a lot of that younger generation. Those kids are in their 20s now, you know, and they see the world in a different light than we do. And we have got to, the older generation, we have got to open our eyes to what they see. To be able to accept what they're telling us as to what they see, because our parents made mistakes raising us. We made mistakes raising our children. No matter how great a job we think we did, we've made mistakes raising our children. And those mistakes they want to share with us. Those are things they want to tell us we need to change, and we need to be accepting of that change. You know what I mean? And when they see that acceptance from us, then maybe we can gain some acceptance from them of the wisdom, knowledge, and the roadblocks ahead that we see for them. You know, and you know, that's where I say that disconnect between the older and younger generations need to come together. But you know, maybe one of your other brothers can, you know, give an opinion on that as well.
Actually, I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it
Yeah,
changed right before our eyes too.
it did, and we allowed it. That's the funny part. We allowed it, and we're not paying attention to what they're telling us. Okay, and when I say they, I mean these politicians and this opposition to us as a people, because believe me, brothers, it has an effect on what's happening in this world. It has an effect on the opportunities that our children are going to have. It has an effect on the life that they're going to have going ahead. I didn't want my sons to have to join the military. When I was coming up and I joined the military, I figured I would make that sacrifice so my children would not have to. But the world wasn't changing on pace the way that I thought it would. And lo and behold, 3 of my sons end up in the military. Okay.
That's good.
But it did change their lives for the better.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. What I had to realize that I didn't see back then was that was a means of change. You use every tool available to you for the change that you're seeking. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And they saw how the military changed their father's life. And little did I know at the time, but I was laying the blueprint for them to have a better life. When all of that finally did dawn on me, when maturity hit me in the head like a ton of bricks, and it dawned on me, then it kind of opened my eyes to other paths that need to happen. And one of the first things I realized is that I need to start listening to them. And instead of just being dad also listens. But when they see that dad has learned something from them, that's even more important, because that forges stronger relationships. And that strong relationship is what we all need, because we need to rebuild our village. Our villages have been torn asunder, and we need to build them back.
Man,
Damn.
that's the truth.
All right, bro. So, you said you were in the military. What branch?
Yes, sir. United States Army, 12 Bravo 2 Juliet, Combat Engineer Airborne.
Okay, that'll work.
Yeah, I was gung ho for the foolishness.
When did you get out?
I got out in 1991.
Oh, same year I got out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got out in 1991. I came home and I struggled a bit until I found myself, and once I did, I took off from there. You know what I mean?
It's all about the journey, man. It's the journey.
Yeah, and that's what one of the things I try to explain to the younger generation. See, one of the things about the younger generation is they don't know what it's like to live without the internet, without the immediacy of everything. They want to know something, they can Google it. Bam, they have that information.
They'll never have that understanding at all. This has been their life.
That's correct. Now, how that translates into their lives is the things that they want in life, they think should be just as immediate. You know what I'm saying? So to speak. Mm-hmm. And we know as the older generation, that's not how it happens. Nope. A lot of things have to go into you achieving a dream or you achieving a goal. There's everything. If you want to get across the street, you got to start by taking a step.
Yeah.
Because what's across the street is not going to come to you. The younger generation doesn't see it that way. Because if they want a pizza, they make a phone call. They hit a button on the phone. Bam, somebody just rung your doorbell. There's a pizza outside. Okay. And it translates into a lot of different things with the younger generation, a lot that we don't understand. Fellas, for the first time in my life, I grocery shopped online a couple of weeks ago. For the first time. Why? Because I listened to the younger generation. Okay, I did that grocery shopping online. It took me 15 minutes. It could have taken me couple of hours out of the day to go to the grocery store, walk through the grocery store, select items, go through the register, get it bagged, then get it home and put it all up. Couple of hours of my time. She saved me a couple of hours time by, Dad, you're doing things the old fashioned way. This is how you do it now. And I had to trust that. And because I trusted that, everything was fine with it. And that changed my perspective on that. Okay. I have a twin. And believe it or not, my twin brother still does not believe in paying bills remotely or online. He's gonna drop it off at the water department. If it weren't for the fact that Duke Energy and Whistler Coochie decided they weren't even going to have locations that you could go to anymore, he'd be dropping the light bill off. You know what I'm saying? So we tend to be like the generation before us. They were kind of stuck in what they knew because it worked for them. Okay. And the same goes for us. We do what we do because it works for us. And we've got to learn to embrace the fact that we can help shape this younger generation by teaching them to use what works for them best for them. You know what I mean?
I think, you know, oh, I'm sorry, brother RJ. My apologies, bro.
No, go ahead. No, go.
No, I was just thinking, man, when you said that, because I think, like, you know, that's why I said how to utilize that for their advantage also, because because it can also have a negative impact, of course, as you spoke on using that, because they're using it in the wrong way. Because as you stated, you know, what the future holds and what is happening now in the present, you know, it makes, like you said, we had to get out of our own way. You know what I mean? Like you said, your daughter brought to your attention, you know, oh, you're doing it the old fashioned way. I mean, funny thing you said it. I mean, I know people still write checks. You know, my mom used to always say, oh, well, write your check. You know, instead of paying cash, it's a better receipt. You know, if they say they didn't do it, you know, it come through your account. You know that you have that receipt, because they know if they cash it, that you paid. You know, I mean, that it was paid. So you know, I see all those type of things, but then now some things are all electronically. Everything is, you know, I mean, certain things that you can do now that it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of money. You know, from savings, like you said, your brother is so stuck on that where he had to go, you know, depending on the distance, you know, he had to go drive somewhere. And, you know, of course, if he was limited funds, then, you just probably have enough gas to get through the week. And if you do that, but now that at your fingertips that you can pay things online, you know what I mean? You can, you can order things online, and look, Amazon is a one proven fact that, man, you know, you can pretty much buy anything on Amazon versus, you know, like my wife, I don't know the last time that we went in the grocery store and bought anything for holidays or for birthdays or for anything, when she just can go at the click of her fingertips and just go pay for it and get it delivered for wherever it is. You know, you had to go to the place, buy it, package it, go take it, ship it off. Well, now you have people to do that for you. You know what I mean? So those type of things, it makes it a lot more convenient. And again, it saves a lot of time. So instead of putting it on you, you can put it on that person and pay a small fee.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes when you become a part of a certain group where, you know, like say for Amazon Prime, it might not cost you no shipping. So now you only pay for the product. Now, before you would have to go and pay $20, $30, $50, $100 to ship something from like the street. If my boy Strick or D tries to ship something from where they at to me, it might cost them, $30, $40, $50. Now it can cost them not even $5, $6.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. It saves a lot of time and money.
See, the one of the things that I see in that too, brothers, is that, you know, when we learn from them, we also learn that we can teach as we learn, because they're so used to and so demanding of the immediacy of everything. They're subject to, you know, fraud and being scammed and eventually it could lead to someone actually being hurt, and has. So that's where our wisdom, going forward, can help them out in their haste to do things. You know what I mean? Because like credit cards. What's one of the first things these youngins start getting as soon as they hit 18? Applications for credit cards. Oh, we will extend you, blah blah blah. You're approved. I started talking to mine when she was too young for a credit card about the pitfalls of that. You don't want to do that, and why? You know what I mean? So, but this younger generation also is not into this working for anybody or working for everybody type thing. They are more mobility minded, and being that way, most of them want to be independent, of employment, and we don't understand that. But when we start taking time to listen to them, we can help them avoid, potholes in the road, whereas they can also help us help us achieve a greater future for us going forward, or a better future for us going forward. I can see that around my neighborhood, around the subdivision I live in. Some of these older people, the retirees, are so stuck in their ways that they don't want change. You know what I mean? They don't want this to change. They don't want that to change. And that's unrealistic. That is very unrealistic. And we realizing that and seeing the way this younger generation is moving, we got to get that connection back. And if that means that we have to learn from them, we just got to learn from them. And if there's things that we can teach them, we can't be afraid to speak up. We got to learn to speak up, and we got to learn to keep speaking, because some of these youngsters can be quite brash and quite harsh in their tone and conversation. But when has that ever stopped, progress? Only when we let it. I hear so many of us our age that again, brothers, excuse my French, when you talk to them about the younger generation, the first thing they'll say is, "Oh man, I ain't fucking with them, they crazy." Well,
Yeah.
why? Because nobody's there to give them guidance, and you just kind of admitted that you're not up to the task. You know what I mean? One of the things that I am endeared to, man, and I get a good feeling about every time I hear it, is the simple word UNC. UNC. When a young black man calls me UNC, that means I got his respect. Okay? That means I've got his respect. That means now I got to keep walking in this path that I've been walking in, because what I'm telling him I need to be living. Because if it's going to help him change, then he needs to see why. You know what I mean? My wife asked me the other day about my godson, the young man named DJ. He called me and he was going through a little something, and it kind of simple, but because he's a young man with a young family, him and his old lady just had a baby. They just bought a house. He got laid off, but then he got another job a week later. But that put a gap in the pay cycle for him and his old lady. Okay, because she just had the baby, she hadn't been working for a few months. But what the problem was, that his car insurance payment was going to be 3 days late. Okay. Now remember what I said about the younger generation and the immediacy of things? Well, not understanding that there's something you can do, brother. It's only 3 days. And it's what you need to do is very simple. It's called pick up the phone and call them. That's something young people don't do. You call young people nowadays, man, they will not answer the phone. Send them a text, they'll text you right back.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So that has an effect on their lives, because you have this issue that, you know, it's a small minor problem if you talk to someone, but you don't have the wherewithal to know to pick up the phone and tell these people, listen, my payment's going to be 3 days late. What you're going to hear on the other end is, okay, Mr. So and so and so, we'll take that payment date as that date. You know what I mean? Or they'll go ahead and grant you that grace period. But they don't know that because they won't talk to somebody older. What they're going to do is get out there and try to hustle it up, and sometimes that can lead to bad decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like he did the right thing and calling. If you're stressing about something, number one, talk to somebody. Okay, have someone you can talk to. So if you're
Right.
stressing about something, you can talk to them, and you might find that what you think is a heavy load of stress, not so heavy at all. You know what I mean? You got another shoulder to lean on right there. Maybe somebody can give you a different direction. Maybe someone can give you some information that can help you absorb that problem. You know what I'm saying? And him just calling, stressed out about that, showed him that that wasn't a real problem at all. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's just one of the many examples of what I mean by we've got to get that communication back with the younger generation. You know what I mean? Even if we have to be a bit forceful in you know, approach, or a bit aggressive in making an approach. A lot of times we won't approach them at all because we don't want to have the stress of having that conversation, or they think they know everything, and why should I try? Because even if we only get a couple of words understood, that couple of words might make that difference.
Mm.
So
Man, that meant, you know, that tells a lot, you know. I mean, and and thank you for sharing that with us, man. Would anybody like to elaborate on what brother RJ talking about? How about you, D Strict?
Man, he hitting it on the money.
Yeah, man. You know, and like I said, it's funny thing. RJ said something about that text thing. I remember when I used to be with my ex, and we had an upstairs, downstairs, and when the texting thing had became real strong, which it has over the past years, that a lot of people communicate by text versus, um, versus actually speaking to each other. But it was funny that, man, we had a young man on one time, bro RJ, and we was asking about, we went to the dating thing, and I asked him, I said, you know, the old school fashion, and where, you know, you would go up to that lady's door if you're picking up for a date, and you'll knock on her door, or if she with her parents, she stay with her parents, you know, you address the parent, you know. And we asked him, you know, so would you walk to the door, or would you actually, you know, sit outside and text him? Yeah, yeah. So he stated to us was, oh, I would text her until I'm outside. I said that if my daughter stayed with me, you wouldn't take on no date, because you're not gonna text her and let her come outside and I don't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But that's where it has become when it comes to everything about text, and then some people be okay with, you know, that, you know what I'm saying? So that it goes back to communication, you know, communicating with the, you know, younger generation as verbally versus, you know, we're actually talking to them, you know, sitting down, having those conversations. I find myself that, you know, like we said, you know, you reaching out to a young person and talking to them and everything else. But, you know, when we were coming up and we had older gentlemen that might have went to prison, or might have went to had gotten in trouble, and they used to tell us, hey man, young man, you don't want to get into this, man. This, you know, it can cause you a lot of work. I did this amount of time, and you know what I mean, and I come back out in society, man, everything has changed versus, you know, but we sat there and we listened.
Now you say, like you said, some young generation they don't want to hear it. They don't know nothing what you're saying to them. You know, it's almost foreign to them. Because and it's so bad because it's like we carried ourselves as such because respectfully of what has been instilled in us in years of when we were younger. You wouldn't catch yourself out here walking around and you see someone that's older or elderly and you just running off at the mouth and cursing up a storm. You wouldn't dare do that because you know that if that get back to your mom or your dad or even uncle, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, whatever, it was some repercussions to that. And then now our parents didn't be scared of us. Oh my God, he's going to say this, or I don't know how he'll react. Our parents didn't care about how we react. You know what I mean? It's the point of, you do something that wasn't up to their standards as far as respect, you're going to get your butt whooped. But now it's like I think some of the part of the generation, there's no repercussions. And now the repercussions to them that it's a judgment by society or by some people in law enforcement because they just, all they know is, you go out here and get in trouble. Nobody had them say, well, if you do this, you can get in trouble. Well, if they had nobody to tell them nothing different, or they got some parents that want to be their children's friend versus their parent, that plays a part in certain aspects. You know what I'm saying? I would sit there and joke with my children, but I'm not finna sit there and talk to them as well as I'm going to sit there and they call me out my name or you my dude or my excuse my expression, my nigga and all this other crazy nonsense. No, I'm your parent. You address me as such.
Right.
But
go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine. And so I found that to be a difference, that played difference because we wouldn't dare go back and talk to an older guy and, saying like you said, it would be uncle or, whatever the case may be, you would use those terms, but as a form of respect. Now you find some that do use that in a way because they admire or they watch how you move. Just like D is younger than all of us, but he has people that's older than him admire him because of the way he moves, but he moves as he would be our age. You get what I'm saying? Because it's what's instilled in him. It's how he carry himself. He'll tell guys, man, people be wondering about you, inquisitive about you, or who you are. Just like you are, Jay, just like Strick, myself. People will just come to us and be like, you might think that they didn't notice, but they pay much attention about you because it's like now that that somebody's actually watching you, even though that's who you carry yourself and that's your characteristics, period. But it also betters you because knowing someone young outside of our own children is looking up to us. So now that makes us move in a different way. You know what I'm saying? That we know we have to still be, regardless of we're our own man, but we still have to be, want to carry ourselves, continue carrying ourselves like that. We don't want to get out of character because there is someone that might need that type of person to look up to because they don't have that. When you got, and then it's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not judging, but just imagine you got, everybody in the household, if everybody went to jail, nobody finished, nobody went to college, nobody did this, everybody was a drug dealer. I'm not judging, but I'm just saying. So where are they getting their information from? Now goes back to social media. So that you're using either the streets, and back then there was the streets, or now it's social media to find their answers that they're looking for because they might want to do the right thing. But if they're in tuned into they're a product of their environment. Now they're a product of their environment is you either going to be a dope dealer, you're going to go to jail, or you might lose your life. You know what I'm saying? Or get in trouble with the law. You know what I'm saying? Those are the type of things that I've seen that speaking to young men. And they had no whatever. Now, in my mind, if I did see those type of things in certain ways, I would say I want to do better. I want to do something different because I see that it's nothing good that comes behind of what the type of lifestyle they're living. Yeah, it can work good for a certain time period, but you know, at some point you can get caught doing something if it's illegal. You know, and it just goes back to when we were taught. You know, we were taught to go to work, get a job, you know, finish, you know, go get a job, and then retire. Well, now got back from learning from the younger generation, they're believing entrepreneurship. You know, and I found that to be profound because I'm like, wow, like, you know, these guys like, oh man, look, man, I'm not gonna work. And I was telling the gentleman, you know, before I said, you know, I found myself asking young men like, do you see yourself doing this for the next 2 years or 3 years? Oh no, man, I plan on doing this XYZ, just like you are, Sir RJ. That when you was talking about, man, like you saw me, you met me in construction, and you know, you was like, hey man, you know, this is another side to this. You know what I'm saying? Even though that I was older, but the point about it is you still encouraging, even if it's somebody amongst your peers as far as the same age group, you know, closer to the age group, you're still giving that encouragement. That tells a lot about you as a person, as a man.
Well,
you know what I mean?
well-
You still putting that encouraging aspect behind you, regardless if you're saying, oh, what if you had your mentality saying, hey man, you know, that brother, he's stuck in his ways. He ain't gonna listen to what I'm saying to him. Well, you see, that's not the choice, because I am a listener. I believe in advancing. So that because you did that played a big part in me making a change in what I'm doing now. You see what I'm saying? Because I've still been doing the same thing.
Man,
brother.
I'm sorry, brother. My grandmother used to say, when she planted her gardens, she would read the old almanac, the old farmer's almanac, and she planted one night, and I didn't understand that. She said, well, you do what you know, and you go by what you know. She said, but one thing you don't know is what's going to happen after you put that seed in the ground. She said, but the question is, will anything ever grow if you don't put that seed in the ground? And that was so profound, because what that means in life is, no matter what I learn, no matter what I know, that helps me. But how can that be of greater good to those around me? Simple. Share it. Share it. Each one teach one. If someone picks up on the knowledge that I have, and it helps to improve their life one iota, well, me sharing has done what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can't live by the crab in the barrel mentality. It's not about what I have, it's about what we can get, what we can achieve. You know what I mean? Because no matter what I get can be taken. It's much harder to take what we achieve as a community. That's how life changed for us. That's why we can be able to sit here and on this podcast and have this conversation. Remember, just 30, 40 short years ago, we were excluded in the majority of things. You know what I mean? But now we have a platform, we have a voice, and we got to stand back up and start using it. You know, I encourage all of you brothers to Google the documentary Eyes on the Prize and share that with your folk. You know what I mean? It'll enlighten you to a lot of things about the struggle and how somehow we backed down from it. We were making progress on this country. You know what I mean? And we have made progress on this country, but we made it at a terrible cost. And that cost was largely borne by the black man, and therefore affecting our children. But this generation, my generation, and the generation behind us, we're reclaiming that. You know, we're reclaiming that. I'm proud of the fact that, you know, when I hear folks say deadbeat dad, you know, brothers are standing up. Who you talking to, or who you talking about? Because it can't be brothers. You know, I was a single father, and I've known several brothers that, you know, single fathers that step up for their kids. Now, do we still have the other ones out there clowning like that? You got them in every race, across the world. So it's not just us, you know. The same thing with the connotation on black crime. I've learned to put it in perspective and to teach the younger generation of that perspective. You know what I mean? If we're supposed to be 13%, the only reason that we're overrepresented in prison is because of systemic racism. It's not because we're actually committing that much crime. Look at the amount of people that are released every day, exonerated. But mostly it's in where you want to be. A lot of those folks wouldn't even got caught up in those situations to be charged erroneously if they hadn't positioned themselves to be caught up, in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to drag you off a college campus and call you a drug dealer. It's hard to, drag you off a military base and say you're a car thief. You know what I mean? So there are certain things that we can still teach them about the progress that they want to make. But we've also got to learn to embrace their ideas of what they want to do and find ways to help them achieve that. And it all begins with learning to talk to them.
Bro, RJ, would you, if you don't mind answering, brother, and would you say that sometimes it happens with people be a product of their society? I mean, of their surroundings.
Absolutely. One of the first things that we've got to get our politicians to acknowledge, and I'm sure that they already know this, but one of the major drivers of crime is poverty. That's the catalyst. That's the wood. That's the wood that keep the bonfire burning. Poverty. And the only thing that we have ever asked to get out of poverty was opportunity. But we have got to teach, again, civic engagement to force that opportunity instead of allowing these children to get out here and trying to figure it out on their own. And, we all notice that the criminal element will offer more opportunity than colleges.
Oh,
this is the reason why we have as many prisons as full as they are, and that's not by mistake. That's an industry, and we have to start teaching our children of the fact that it's an industry. So when you're attracted to that gold chain that you see your favorite rapper wearing, or those 94 vintage Jordans that cost $1,500 for a pair of sneakers. When you're attracted to that kind of stuff, just understand that you're actually being targeted. They want you to love that kind of stuff. They want you to try to achieve that kind of stuff because they know that the opportunity likely isn't there. And if you want it bad enough, likely you're going to commit a crime to get it. And then you're in the other side of the system that was built for us. Okay. And make no bones about it, the prison system in this country was built for us. Wasn't built by us, but it was built for us. And that's the only thing this country has ever built for us. You know what I mean? So when we start teaching them that, that's an industry that you're actually being pulled into, just like cigarette makers advertise to get you to smoke their brand, you're being advertised to draw you that way. And they don't have an understanding of that. Shaq said a while ago, we did have the OGs that used to pull us to the side and say, hey, look, young man, you don't supposed to be out here, man. It's too much in you for you to be out here on these streets. These streets ain't for you. Get out of here. And next time I see you, I'm gonna beat your little ass. Take this $20 and go on about your business.
Right.
But they would get you off that corner, and they would not allow you to be out there because they saw that potential in you. Fast forward to where we are now. It hurts my feelings to hear these young men talk about prison like it's a badge of honor. It's not. It's not. It was a trap that you fell into. You survived it. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything about that. that you survived it and you made it back out on this side. But what did you learn? What can you share with the generation behind you to prevent them from falling into what you've been into? What we don't get that. What we get is a glorification of that same system that they should have never been in the first place. I mean, in recent years, they discovered the kindergarten to prison pipeline, right? And because of that, now we have this. They're so concerned over CRT. Why? Because we opened our eyes to things, and we had civic engagement, and we decided we were going to start fighting all the nonsense. Well, that's their answer to us fighting. You know what I mean? So what do we do? What do we do?
I got a question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned CRT a couple of times. What's your understanding of CRT?
My understanding of CRT?
Yeah. In regards to politics and what they're saying and doing right now.
Okay. And in regards to policy as it affects children K through 12, it is all snake oil and bullshit.
No, I'm talking about CRT. I'm talking about
CRT is a college taught course.
That's what I want. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we continue to express that CRT is not taught in any elementary 12 school
anywhere in the country.
Anywhere in the country. So whenever I use the word CRT, I always want to make sure that people realize that is not something that's taught in K through 12. It's a dog whistle.
It is, and let me
dog whistle. It's intended to get people riled up. It's easier to get people riled up about something that's bullshit than it is about some truth.
That's correct. That's correct. It's a dog whistle to a certain demographic.
Yeah, I'm so adamant about every time I hear that word, I make sure people know. Look, for the masses that don't quite understand, CRT, critical race theory, is not taught in any school in America right now, other than college level, and that is sparse. That's
correct.
And they've utilized that to change the course of education in the country, because now they don't want to teach in certain conservative states, certain things that happened in history. They want to continue on the path of Christopher Columbus and how Abe Lincoln freed the slaves, and which by proclamation he did. But the thing is that there's so many different things that happen in history that we tend to ignore. But one thing we cannot ignore, that our history is embedded in this country far more than what they've told you. And now that we've started to be exposed, like you said, they're like, what do we do? What do we do? Well, the same thing that happened in the past when it comes to like in the state I'm in. When they noticed that there was, in the beginning of firearms, like, hey, man, it's hard as hell to get a firearm. Man, you got to go through this course, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then they started realizing, man, there's a large population of certain people that are getting firearms. Damn, what do we do? Now everybody can get a firearm. Don't need no class. Don't need no class at all. And that's many states they do this in, not just mine.
Florida
why is that?
Florida just went to it. Well, let's harken back to.
Well, Florida's always had loose gun laws, though. They've always had.
We've always had very loose gun laws here in Florida. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I know.
And now they just solidified the fact that just about anybody can have a gun.
Well, and the reason why they did that was because if we kill each other, and it's much easier for them to kill us if we got a gun.
That's right.
And that's anybody. We ain't just talking about the police. I'm talking about anybody.
Brother, I've been putting out that warning ever since the governor signed that proclamation into law.
And these kids don't listen. I seen a kid the other day with some sweats on, shorts, and a gun sticking out his hips, just slanging. He got a bag in his hand. I'm like, look at this shit. Look at this.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
They don't understand the concept of we fit the description.
No.
They don't understand that black codes are still prevalent. And the thing is, it's in their face. They call them Ken and Karen. They call them Ken and Karen.
And then on the other side of it, though, on the other side, I don't interrupt you, but on the other side is that we are the threat. You understand? We're the threat to each other sometimes.
Yes.
And because of that threat, they feel the need to want to protect themselves. And being exposed to such violence on such a level for so long, you believe this Grand Theft Auto nonsense.
Yeah.
And because of that, you want to. I got a kid that wants to be a hood. He wants to be a hood. He wants the label. You know, he wants to be looked at as a criminal, a hook, a thief, or whatever. You know, a con or whatever it is. But the reality is that half of them aren't, because they don't know what it's like to be that. They just do it.
No, they don't. They don't. Most have never seen someone shot. Most have never seen the result of someone being shot. Most of them never seen, you know, death in their face, and they glorify it because they pay their favorite entertainers to glorify that for them. You know, you look back in the 80s when you had rappers like the Poor Righteous Teachers and Pusha T and a few of them folks that used to try to spit that educational rap and that uplifting rap. Where are they now? Where are they now? Society doesn't want that to happen. Okay. New York is one of the states that has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Yet you can buy a burner on the street very easy. Chicago, same way. Well, how are them boys getting, you know, Glocks with switches? Because they intend for that to happen. They want that. What it is genocide. Their interpretation of the Second Amendment is a promotion of genocide.
Well, I don't know if it's a promotion of genocide. I don't want to say that heavy. That's just my personal opinion. I'll say. I think that the government, as it stands, you know, we're looking for politicians, and I've heard it even just in our conversation. You know, we look for politicians to do things, and the reality is that politicians do not regulate society as you believe they do. They just don't.
No.
And now they may regulate your quality of living to a certain extent. You know, I'm not talking about the, you know, Jim Crowers and the stuff that they do to us in general. But as a whole, the concept is that guns have gotten out of control in the United States. You have 300 million people in the United States, 350, some people say, but you still have over 400 million guns. One of the safe barriers that we probably will never be invaded if we're dealt with. It won't be a hand-to-hand thing, that's for sure. They say everybody in the United States got a gun. Shit, we better not go there.
The average is 10 guns per household.
You see.
So we have more than a gun problem. So this is why
so now what they said is that we can't regulate it in any way. So just let's let them do it. Because look, every other day we have a gun shooting, we have a mass shooting, and they know it. So now the only thing you can do is get guns.
Yes.
Or leave, because it ain't gonna change.
Yes. Okay. So do you know when the first gun law was written?
Doesn't matter. You know why? Because I know that there's 10 guns in every household now, so it don't matter when it was written.
But knowing why and when the first gun law was written kind of exposes why the lack of gun legislation is out there now.
But the thing is that we know, and you know, that the lobbyists will always pay the politicians to do what they want, and that's the way it's been. That's why I say politicians are not in any way trying to help. Will they hinder us? Absolutely. But help us to the extent that we're going to change the course of our life and quality of life? No, they're not. They're not. I don't think that there's any legislation that's happened in the past that's going to be significant enough, or in the future, because they can't tie their shoes. You know, they won't.
Okay, and here is where my conversation about civic engagement kicks right back in. Okay, politicians write the laws at the will of the people. They can be forced, which is why a black man can own a house right now, which is why a black man can actually have a decent job right now. It can be done. Was it a hard task? Did it take generations? Absolutely. But did we stop fighting?
I got you. I understand that. No, I'm not.
Did we stop fighting?
No, I'm not
And
disputing that, brother.
and one of the repercussions of us, not fighting as hard is the fact that we have so many guns on the streets now.
Okay,
That
you're
is
right.
that is entirely intentional by this country.
Yes,
That is
it is.
entirely intentional.
Well, I wouldn't say the country. I'd say it's a state by state thing, because the country doesn't rule over, and all you have is the Second Amendment, but it's the states that regulate how guns are handled and carried within each state. The problem that is that what else can they do? And I'm not trying to. The politicians, on your quality of living, your DA, how many kids or how many people know who the DA is in their county, or who their alderman is? And then we discussed this in the past. Your quality of living starts changing in a political side on the grassroots in your local community that you live in. That's where you get the ability to live in a comfortable atmosphere. If you're gonna rely on the politicians, because it's on the federal level, not even an issue. All they say is it a violation of the Second Amendment? If it ain't, I ain't got nothing to say about it.
Okay. So let me interject a little bit. Let me tell you something about a Florida law down here, and it is absolutely gun legislation. Absolutely, it is gun legislation. It doesn't tell you can't have a gun. Right. It does not in any way tell you cannot have a gun. And we affectionately call it 1020 life. Okay. So that's gun legislation that has been very effective down here in Florida to keep, the some of the criminal element from obtaining and using firearms. It has been very effective since the drug era of the 90s. Okay. So the way they explain 1020 life is if you are in possession of a gun and you commit a crime, it's just an automatic 10 years, no questions asked. Okay. If that is a felony crime, that's a life sentence or 20 years, or 20-year sentence. Okay. If you discharge that firearm and hurt someone during the commission of that crime, you automatic life sentence, no questions asked. Okay. And that scaled back a lot of harm that was being done here in Florida, especially to one another. Okay.
Mandatory minimums, you say?
Yeah.
The only
sometimes
problem with mandatory minimums
is the application of them.
Yes.
Exactly. Absolutely. But here's the thing, that as well can be legislated. Okay. I heard a little joke in a video that had a little white girl in court in front of a judge, and the judge told her that her crimes were so heinous that they were going to try her as a black male. Okay. It was a funny little video, but at the same note, that has some very serious implications about what's been going on in this country. And we have to start writing laws that are truly colorblind, that can't be swayed by judges. Okay. The problem is discretion. We allow too much discretion in the police department, in the judicial system as a whole. Even in the prison system, there is discretion that should not be there. You know what I mean? So when we legislate and we take discretion out, we'll stop having these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. But yeah, when we can legislate to take discretion out of the hands of these legislators and these judges and from the police officers on up, the basic issue is going to be discretion. We can take that out of their hands and legislate rules of law in black and white and make the law clear, then things will get a little bit better. That way we don't have, Judge so-and-so giving little Johnny, 5 years probation, and then Jamal come in for the exact same issue, the exact same crime, but Jamal got 20 years. You know what I mean? So, and it's going to be the same thing on gun legislation. Gun legislation has to be fair. Right now, they don't want gun legislation because they're promoting this replacement theory amongst the fearful whites. So that everyone wants to replace them, the blacks, the Jews, the Hispanics, you know, everybody's going to replace them. So everybody need a gun. You know what I mean? So it's getting to be a dangerous world out there, brother. It's getting to be a dangerous world out there. And unless we stand up and demand some gun legislation or instill or institute politicians that will actually give us some meaningful gun legislation, then yeah, we're going to continue to have a problem. Now, not to be hypocritical, but I honestly believe we need gun legislation, but you can best believe that my household is strapped down.
Exactly.
And it's simply because I feel my hand is forced. You know, how can I go unprotected amongst, you know, the cowboys?
As the other 349 million people think, they're starting to say, shit, they need a gun. Well,
correct.
I mean, this is where we live. This is the society we live in. And I don't think gun legislation is going to change anything because we have too many guns out there already. Those that have them have them. You know?
Here's where I'm going to roll you back to history. Okay, gun legislation has actually worked before.
In Australia?
No, right here in America. right here in America. When at the early 1800s and previous times to that, and even times beyond.
Yeah, but
it was common for these folks to walk around with their sidearms.
Yeah, but RJ, check this out. Before that time, there was not mass manufacturing of firearms. Before that time, there was not 30, 40, 50 companies making it.
There weren't, but there was still access to firearms, and there was still a large population of people that carried a sidearm.
Yes,
but nonetheless, it doesn't matter the number of manufacturers. It does not matter the number of guns on the street. Effective legislation and effective policing. You know what I mean?
They got legislation now saying you can't kill people, but they're still doing it every day.
Yeah, but we also have effective punishments for that too.
Yeah,
right?
but how many have you seen get punished? It don't matter when you're killing 20 people a day and you're punished.
Okay. That's why we fight for effective legislation. You see,
don't get me wrong. I'm not going to minimize legislation. But what I am going to say is that legislation effectively has not done anything to minimize any kind of gun catastrophe that we've had in the United States. There is no 3-day wait period that saved them. It's been no small arms, no ammo. None of that has worked. Okay, there is no legislation that can stop somebody from grabbing their gun and going to kill 20 people right now. There isn't. It's not. They're getting them legally. They're getting them illegally. And the legislation has not, and it has not worked. Unless you're going to do something like Australia did and say, we're going to ban firearms. Which they're not going to do. They're not going to do it. So what legislation do you think that has been effective in modern time in regards to slowing down anything? Because when you talk about the 1800s, you're talking about a population of probably 4.5 million in the United States, maybe 5 million. All right. Now we're talking about 300 times that. Almost not 300, but 100 times. Close to it. But the thing is that the difference in the manufacturing is evident. Because now, instead of just Colt making guns and maybe, Smith & Wesson or, a few other foreign made guns, but we're talking about in the United States. They're importing them. They're making them. Man, brother, they're making them every time there's a gun shooting. They're people buying bullets and buying guns like crazy. So now what do we do with legislation? What legislation can we possibly write that it might stifle the next generation?
Okay, so let's parse away from guns for a second.
Okay.
And let's talk about another industry that, in explaining this, is the same way that, coupled with, tackling the gun issue is going to be huge, but it does not mean we cannot do it. Okay,
I
and
just don't know enough.
we're going to have to do it, or we're going to all have to start buying bulletproof cars and bulletproof clothes, and and walking the street strapped down. It's heading that way.
I thought you knew it's already that way.
So no, we're actually at a fulcrum of what we should be doing. Okay, and we're actually being pushed by the gun lobby to allow it to happen. Okay, but as long as we know that there is something that we can do and we don't give up the fight, okay, that's the first part right there. Okay, we don't give up the fight. For as many guns as there are on the streets, people would willingly abide gun legislation if it were effective. Okay, how do you have effective gun legislation? Well, number one, it starts with your politicians, but that starts from the local level on up. Okay, when you can get to the point of banning certain things, okay, the drug industry in the early 1800s, when Coca-Cola came out as a beverage, sodas, you could only get sodas from the pharmacy. Did you know that?
Yeah, because they were the only in it.
That's correct. Okay, and that was a legal thing, and it was so widespread, and no one thought anything of it. Little Johnny could walk into the corner store, plop down his nickel, and walk out with a cocaine-laced drink. Okay, no one thought anything of it, but it became a big, huge problem in this country. Cocaine became a huge problem in this country. You could go buy cocaine over the counter in tablets, but it became such a huge problem in this country that they began to legislate against it. Everybody had it. Everybody could get it. Okay, and unfortunately, it's still that way today on the black market, but it's not as big a problem as it was. Okay, so things can be affected. Take the coal industry. Coal was king in this country, but when we found out it was killing us, we decided to do something about it. Is it still in use? Of course it is. Is it as widespread as it was? Nah, not so much. Okay, we allowed the politicians to criticize the crime bill of the 1990s, but if you was alive like I was alive in the 1990s, you know that crap was needed. Folks had lost their damn mind. It was hard to walk out of your house and not hear gunshots. You know what I mean? The drug trade was so strong that young folks, man, fuck that job. I don't need no job. You know what I mean? Why would I need a job when I can go work for the plug down on the corner and make a couple $1,000s a week hustling? You know? So we lost some generations, but we also didn't look at the fact that while we disengaged from civic engagement, we disengaged from our civic duties, the other side didn't. They did not. You know what I mean? And they continue to vote. They continue to vote for their interests. Unfortunately, their interest hasn't been ours. You know what I mean? So we have so many guns on the street, and it's because of fear. Their fear of us. Not just the fact that they want to eradicate us, but their fear of us, and they want to help us get rid of us. You know what I mean? But if we start talking and engaging civically and putting people in office that are actually going to do something and not be timid of the NRA, not be timid of the gun lobby, and be willing to actually do something, then we can start making some headway. If they made it to where, I would get a life sentence if I got caught with my AR-15, or I could turn that bitch in and get a full refund for it, guess what I'm going to do?
Yeah, but these cats that are killing people, they don't intend on living afterwards most of the time. I mean, most of the time they got a death wish.
Okay. You know what else I've seen in my in my lifetime? And thankfully, we used to pass by it every day. Okay. But in my lifetime, I have seen mental health institutions shuttered,
Oh yeah,
defunded,
yes, they were
just shut down. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's something else we don't address. Now you'll hear the Republicans speak up and say something about mental health when we start talking about gun legislation. But mental health is a part of gun legislation. Make no bones about it.
Yes, it is.
Okay?
You're absolutely right.
Because here's a fact. In 95% of mass shootings, that firearm was purchased legally, typically a few days prior to the shooting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That says a lot. That says a lot. And then when you get into the minds of these folks that did the shooting,
RJ,
you know,
you're gonna cut me, man. I don't want to say it.
What's that?
But that proves legislation don't work, brother. I mean, if 95% of them bought it legally, where's the legislation going? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. So what if
they didn't choose to buy it illegally?
What if they couldn't what if they couldn't purchase that firearm in the first place?
You're right, but the thing is that what I'm saying to you is that legislation.
What if in order to purchase a firearm you have to have a mental health evaluation?
Yes, that would be wonderful, but they're not going to do it because it's a violation of your Second Amendment rights. They're not going to do it.
And hold on a second. Your Second Amendment to the Constitution, right?
Yes, that means it would require another amendment to the Constitution. It would make require them to make another amendment to the Constitution. And
here is the end goal. And there is the end goal. But where do we start?
Where do we start? You know why it'll be real hard for the next 30 years? You know why it'll be real hard? Because of what happened with the Supreme Court. It will be very difficult because anything that we legislate that has to do with guns, I guarantee you the conservative Supreme Court will kick it down.
Okay, so
the next 30 years. So you can fight for legislation, but you better fight for a seat on that darn bench.
Okay, so let me show you how that's not a 30-year plan, and it can be and it can be more realistic than a 30-year plan. Okay. So we have a presidential election cycle coming up, 2024, correct?
Yes, we do.
And in every presidential cycle, there's also a vote for the Congressional House and the Senate, correct?
Yes.
And the party that
it's not every, because Senate is 6 years, remember?
Right, but typically every presidential race, there's also congressional and Senate seats up for grabs.
Right.
Some years there are more, some years there are less, but typically there always are. Okay, and those seats typically sway the majority one way or another. Okay, so now imagine that the American public is a little bit pissed off with what the Republicans have been showing them since Donald Trump. Okay, a lot of things have been exposed. A lot of the American public sees that the Republican Party is trying to institute their form of autocracy. Okay, and at the expense of democracy. Let's think January 6th and some of this other BS legislation that these red states are putting up right now. Okay, so let's say 2024 comes around, the American public is fed up and they mobilize in droves to vote those individuals that are harming this country out. Okay, we can't say it can't happen. We can't say it can't happen. Let's think Barack Obama. Okay,
wait a second. So let's just say it happens, right? This happens, and we get the presidents, we get Democratic president, we get the House, and we get the Senate.
Correct.
Right? You think that they're going to pass legislative law that's going to curb gun violence? You think that'll happen?
Hold on. See,
I'm
you forgot one more house that needed to be cleaned. You forgot
no,
one
I
more
didn't say
house.
clean.
You-
I didn't say clean because it's not going to
But
happen. When it
but
comes to the
but
Supreme Court.
this is where
Listen,
okay, and that's what I'm talking about.
but we're
Do
not going
you
to.
know?
It's not going to happen. It's a lifetime
Oh,
appointment, and I guarantee you, they're not going to change that. They're
no,
not going
see,
to do that.
you're not understanding where I'm going with this.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So in the 1950s, how many Supreme Court justices did we have? 7.
Yes.
Why?
we do
Because
have the potential to increase
there were 7 federal districts at that time. In the 1980s, we increased to 13 federal districts, yet we only have 9 justices. Over time, we increased from 7 to 9 justices. There is a congressional process to alter or add justices to the Supreme Court.
There is.
It is not unprecedented.
And
It is not unprecedented,
No, it's not.
and it can happen, and it is being discussed.
But as you said, it's an act of Congress, right?
That's correct.
So we can be assured that it ain't going to happen in the next 2 years, right?
Oh, we know this.
Now, is a strong possibility it won't happen in the next 4 years, right? How many
strong possibility?
If we don't win the presidency, do you think that there'll be another Supreme Court justice named, and that will totally destroy any possibility of anything happening when it comes to legislative change? We're beaten by 5 or 6 to 3 right now. Is it 6 to 3 right now?
Yes.
And the two older gentlemen, fine. I mean, they might go out, but if they go out, it's not going to be anytime soon. They've got 5 young three young Supreme Court justices that are conservative. 4, because Gorsuch is really not that young, or not that old. So there's 4. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. I'm not saying it can't turn. Don't get me wrong. I hope what you're saying is true. But the reality is that the likelihood of legislative change is slim to none. There's a greater chance that Donald Trump will win the presidency again than they do some Supreme Court changes.
So when I was taking Taekwondo when I was in the military for a couple of years, I was asked a question, and that question is this: if you look at a mountain, the first thing you're gonna say is that's too big for you to move, but over a lifetime, you can move a big chunk of it, bucket by bucket. Okay. Now, we know that that's heavy lifting. But the reason we're dismayed is because the same reason that you know, a small man is a little timid against running up to somebody 3 times his size. Okay. It's because it's a big task to take on, but it's not an impossible task. It's not an impossible task. The will of the people has always ruled this country. Always. Make no bones about it. Why we have so many guns, that's the will of a certain population of people that has always fought for that value. Okay? Has always fought for that value. Okay? It's the same with other laws in this country. But can they be changed? Yes, they can. Remember, back in the 1940s and the 1950s, blacks was dismayed. We didn't ever think there was ever going to be a civil rights legislation good enough that was going to allow us to be somebody. We didn't give up that fight, and it happened.
We didn't give up.
And it's the same thing with gun legislation. Okay, they want us to give up that fight, but what's the repercussions of that? What's the repercussions of giving up that fight? Well, saying, well, you know, it's 330 million people in the country, but there's over 700 million guns in this country. Over 700. None of them registered. So, but do we give up that fight? No, we don't give up that fight. Why? Because my grandbabies won't have a chance. You know, their children might not have a chance if they make it to that. You know what I mean? So we don't give up that fight. We do what we can do. And if that means pushing a Congress or voting in a Congress that has a majority, and then pushing that Congress to change the Supreme Court so that we can instill a majority of people that are going to do the proper thing, also legislate ethics for the Supreme Court. I know you see what's going on with that shit right now. Okay. But it's a lot of things in government that needs to be cleaned up. And historically, Black people have been the reason why legislation has been cleaned up. I don't know if you know that or not. But we are the contributing factor, the catalyst in most legislation that is popular for us.
We're not.
Okay.
We're not.
Tell me something that can pass without us.
We're not. You know why we're not? Because I can guarantee you that the Hispanic community has outweighed us. The Asian community is coming close to us. But I can guarantee you that we are not thought of as we used to be thought of, because we don't have the voting power that we used to have. Not saying that we don't vote.
We have a vote. We have a voting power that we do not use.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is that in the 40s and 50s, we were the dominant minority race. In the 60s and 70s, we were the dominant minority race. The 80s and 90s, we slowly became less of the dominant minority race. Now, the Hispanic community is the dominant minority race, my friend. And they appeal to when it comes to politics. They don't give a darn about the Black National Caucus no more. I'm telling you, they don't.
You're absolutely right.
So our voting power is diminished so that we're ineffective in politics. You understand? It's the women that bring us up when it comes to voting in our community, because the men don't.
Okay. And you just said a mouthful, my friend, which is why we are having this conversation. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, don't get me wrong.
The men don't. The men, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate every word of it, because you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. You know, and the thing is, that's just another thing that we have to do. You see, what we're doing and having this conversation is actually listing issues that need to be resolved within our communities.
I'm not disputing the fact that legislation is needed. What I'm saying is that legislation is not the answer and solution. Politics is not the solution to anything. It has never been. I don't know what the answer is, but I know this much: the idea that this society will change based on gun laws, it's not true. There is so many people that are suffering from PTSD just from COVID. Never mind the military. Never mind the social effects of the internet and what that does to the mindset of these individuals that are willing to create such havoc and devastation in the shootings that they committed. You know, it's not going to change based on legislation, nor is it going to change based on prayer. It's not going to change on those things. There's got to be action. I don't know what the action is. I know that we continue on legislation, yes. But again, I will point out that legislation has not stopped one mass murder. It has not stopped one mass murder. So I don't know what the answer is. I do think that we should continue on legislation, because it's just a civil society, and that's what we should do. But the reality is that there's got to be a deeper rooted answer. I don't know it. Again, I'm not going to but I'm going to use your analogy. I do not have the desire to carry that bucket and move that mountain, because there's life on the other side of that mountain. So I'm going to go around it. I'm going to go under it. I ain't going to bury it, but I'm going to go under it, around it, or over it, one or the other. But I'm not going to move it, okay? I'm not trying to move it. Because the thing is that if you're trying to move something that is inherent, listen, the fight that we have is legislation, brother. It is legislation that has held us back. It is legislation that has done so much to our community, from Jim Crow laws to rezoning to home buying to jobs. Legislation has done more damage than it has done good. Now, yes, we do have some in high positions. There is some legislation that has helped when it comes to, the women's rights and making sure you have certain, but they're trying to change that shit too. Just like they reverse Roe versus Wade, they can reverse anything when it comes to the powers that be.
Right. So right. So how do you
to do? And I'm part of the legislature. I've been part of the government for many years. But the thing is that you cannot expect them to implement change in your ability to live.
You're correct. But how do you beat a chess master? How do you beat him at his own game? You have to learn the
Learn how
rules
we play.
and play those rules better than him by the way he plays the rules.
Okay, well,
Correct?
who is in a position to play those rules in our country right now for us?
Okay.
Who?
This is why we're having this conversation. We need to be putting ourselves in position to be able to play those rules.
Let's say this: Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Kamala Harris. Okay, she's in a position. What's she doing? You know what she's doing? The same thing she did. Wait a second. The same thing she did in San Francisco as a district attorney. Nothing. Same thing she did as Attorney General of California. Nothing. There is nothing that she has done, and she's in a position, vice president, second in charge. She ain't done nothing.
Okay, and to that we have differing opinions.
Okay. Well, what is she doing? San Francisco?
Because there is things that she has done that has improved the lives of Black people in her community. Her stance on crime. Okay. It hurt a lot of Black people. It hurt a lot of Black people.
Yeah.
But which Black people did it hurt?
What you mean? Which Black people did it hurt?
Can I go to jail for possession of crack if I don't have crack in my pocket?
Wait a second. You do understand that the district attorney of the county has the ability to not have false incarcerations for menial crimes. In San Francisco, she didn't do anything to change that. And then she didn't do anything to change it as the attorney general of the very state that she represents. What is it that she's done?
Okay, so I can't defend Kamala Harris's record because to be honest with you, I've never followed Kamala Harris's progress until she started running for vice president.
Well, when you follow progress,
let me explain something else to you. Okay. And this is for the whole of the American people that they should understand about the office of the vice presidency. What power does that office hold?
Very little.
None.
She held more power when she had a direct effect on the people that she served when she was a district attorney of San Francisco.
That is correct.
And she didn't do it then.
Again, that is in the people's selection of the politicians that represent them. Kamala Harris was not represented. Kamala Harris was not voted in by the Black community.
No, Black community doesn't vote anybody in anymore. Is my point.
Okay, that is the point. When is the last time you've had a canvasser knock on your door or call your phone to talk to you about your political views?
Every election.
Right. How many of them have been Black canvassers talking to you about the issues that go on in your community instead of these national bullet points?
Well, you gotta understand. I live in a very democratic and Black, not Black, but let's just say a very democratic county,
right.
Not only the city. So for me, that's a common occurrence. Okay. But that's not a common occurrence in some cities, in rural areas, in rough areas, where the Black and the Hispanic communities conjugate. So that's not a common occurrence there.
Right.
You cannot. That's why I say legislation has so little effect on the larger level. It is the small cell, it's the micro that matters.
Okay. So you just pointed out a disconnect there, and I'd like to point that out. Okay.
Yeah.
In your community, which is largely a democratic community, that's the norm.
For in my community where I live, but in the urban areas, it's not like that.
Correct, and that would be my community.
Right.
Okay. Now there are thousands of Black families sprinkled throughout my community.
Right.
But there is little to no representation.
You said sprinkled
for us in this community. Correct.
You said sprinkled, right?
Correct.
Well,
okay.
When you sprinkle salt and pepper on your food, you have more food than you do salt and pepper, right?
that is correct.
So
but
you go to an urban area and you don't have the mass voting that you have in the areas that are sprinkled, like my community is sprinkled.
But if you don't put any salt and pepper on it, then you have no flavor whatsoever except for the food, right?
True enough. I'll agree with that too.
Okay, so that salt and pepper still got some input.
It got some input.
So that salt and pepper needs some representation as well.
Yes, it does.
America has a problem with taxation without representation.
Yeah,
And
but the
and
thing is
people that
that
live
when
in
you're
districts,
sprinkled, you're not the dominant voting power. You know what I'm saying?
that is correct. But
And
that
my point with that is that when you go into the urban community where it is, all salt and pepper, or more all pepper, you don't have that drive because
okay.
most
But
you
if
incapacitated of the majority of them. You got 5 million of them that can't vote because of felony convictions.
okay, but here's what I'm pointing out to you. That's a norm. They come out to your community. They talk to folks in your community because you are like-minded. Okay, me trying to convince someone with a job that they need a job is, kind of duplicitous at best. Okay,
If they don't want one, no.
But if I got a training program, I don't need to teach somebody that already knows what I'm training. I need to be out talking to people that need that training, that people that I would like to see have that training. You know what I mean? To talking to people that would actually benefit from that training instead of what they believe they're going through now. You know what I mean? So part of the issue is that, you're canvassing, but you're canvassing to people that are already going to vote for you. You know how much Republican crap I get in my mailbox and folks that come knock on my door and call my phone. That's correct. That's correct. But every election cycle, there's a Democrat running against this individual. I never hear from him.
Win?
Okay. No, you know why? Because we never hear from them. Okay. We never hear from them. I rarely get a mailing.
All the seasoning.
I've never got, well, it's in our choice and representation.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
now a friend of mine just ran for city council and won over in Hillsborough County. Okay. And before then, she was relatively unknown. Okay. But instead of going into areas where they knew her and knew of her activism and knew of her work, she went into areas where these folks was solid red folks going to vote for somebody else because, it's what they've always done. You know what I mean? But when she actually sat down and talked to the people about what she intended, what would they like to see her do, and these type of things. Okay. That is how you win people over. And that is how we get the representation that is going to do what is right for us. Okay. A lot of times we get politicians in office that, they grandstand, what they're going to do on a national stage. But then when they get in office, it's something completely different. Okay. One thing I haven't heard any of our leaders talk about, that in every state at every election level, there is what's called a recall process. We don't engage in that. We can fire politicians. We don't just
recall them when you elected.
Recall them. That's right. We can call a recall vote.
In California, didn't work. It works sometimes, but I mean,
but
the masses vote for somebody, and then you want the masses to recall. It's kind of difficult.
What works if you don't give an attempt? Nothing. So we've got to start using these tools, and when politicians see that the public will use these tools to force them to do their jobs, then we won't have the crying over mass shootings because we don't have adequate gun legislation. We won't have this BS about one man thinking that he's better than the greater population of the country, therefore everything should bow to him. We won't have all that kind of nonsense. But again, it rolls back down to individual responsibility. What are you doing civically? Are you passing the word? Are you having that conversation to people? Are you, trying to explain to folks how that has a compounding effect on their life?
Right.
Because it does. You know what I mean? We can talk about these kids running around with guns all day long. How did they get them? Where's the root of the problem? Okay. Yeah, somebody might have rolled up, popped open the trunk, sold it to them for $15, $20 out the trunk of the car and pulled off. But where did that individual get them from? And where did the individual that supplied him get them from? Who is the responsible gun maker? One thing that America requires on every manufactured gun, every manufactured firearm has a serial number. everyone. Okay. If you can track every car sold in America, why can't you track every gun sold in America?
There is no problem with tracking the guns when it comes to who purchased them initially. But after their purchase initially, there is no requirement for in some states for them to be transferred over legally. That's one. The other thing is that now there are people that are making guns that are not serial made because you can make them with 3D printers now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there is a hole in it.
Okay, so the guns that they make with 3D printers, I don't know if you know, but they did craft legislation to make that illegal.
Yeah, they
Right.
crafted it. They didn't make it stop them from doing it.
So no, it won't stop them from doing it. Okay,
That's
but
what I'm
again,
saying. There's legislation, but it ain't
again,
going to stop the manufacturing, right?
if a serial number is required on every firearm that is manufactured, licensing can be required. Registration can be required. If you are granted the authority to purchase a firearm, at a minimum, you should have to register that firearm, and not just at the point of purchase.
But
You should have to register that firearm as often as you have to renew the tag on your car.
RJ,
You know what I mean?
the problem that you have there is that every state has their own individual gun laws, and the federal government can't mandate the state to have different gun laws.
Okay. So unless you have a concealed carry permit in your state, what's the waiting period that you have to wait?
There is
before
no
you
waiting
can-
period in my state. You go buy a gun, put it on your hip. That's it.
Oh, I forgot you're in Texas. That's right.
There's
That's
no
right.
waiting period.
But that's because Texas is flouting a federal law, and that's the Brady Bill, right? The Brady Bill is federal law. The Brady Bill says that there is supposed to be a 3-day waiting period from the time that you purchase that firearm to the time you pick that firearm up. Okay, that all of that was sponsored around the time that
That's handguns. You know that, right? It's not long.
right,
That's not long.
right.
That's not
Right.
AR-15s either.
And there again is the disconnect in gun laws.
Bro,
Okay.
but
Can a handgun do more damage than an AR? But
depending on which one you got. If you got a 5 and 7, you can do much more damage. Because
right. But your
rounds in the magazine, just like they do in
your average handgun sold. The most popular handgun in America by far is the 9mm. Okay. So the 9mm cannot compare to a rifle that has a round that is smaller but has much more destructive power.
My friend. I don't care if you got a 22. It doesn't matter. Okay.
It doesn't.
It doesn't matter. Most popular, whether it's the problem still lies in the fact that you can go buy a long arm because it don't matter. And these guys ain't buying them within the 3 days. And even if they do, 3 days ain't going to change the fact that you decide to go kill a bunch of people.
No, not at all.
Right. So the legislation is again ineffective.
But see, what we keep touching on is different aspects of gun legislation.
Yeah,
when it should be a combined policy. The issue is that we have politicians that are not willing to address the issue. We as a people are not instilling nor pressing these politicians hard enough to do the right thing, all in their interpretation of that one sentence in the Second Amendment.
Yeah,
okay?
So the thing is that they won't change it based on that. So what legislation do you think will be effective to try and get some kind of change in regards to this mass shooting that we got going every day?
Okay. One, we're never going to get all the guns off the street. Okay. Let's start there. Okay. Number two, we can make legislation that requires you to register your firearms. Okay. We can do that. Okay.
Okay, but how is it going to stop somebody from shooting anybody? That's not going to stop anybody.
It's not.
Okay,
it's not.
Go ahead.
Okay. But combined with that legislation, before you can purchase a gun, okay, before you are allowed a driver's license, what do you have to do? You got to prove you can drive, right? Okay. And in order to take that driver's test, you also got to take a written test, meaning you have a knowledge of what you're going to encounter on the road while you're driving.
What if you can't read and write? Does that mean you don't have the right to carry a firearm?
They have to make accommodations for you. If you can't read and write, that don't stop you from getting a driver's license, does it?
No.
Okay, because they make accommodations. They make right. They make reasonable accommodations. Everything still applies across the board. Okay. Think of that firearm like the tag on your vehicle.
So being that you don't need a permit or a license to buy a long gun, how does that help? Because most of the killings are being done by long guns. You do not need a permit or a license to get a long gun. You be 18.
Okay. So to include long guns in gun legislation, it's a hurdle, but it also can be done.
You know why it's going to be not more than a hurdle? Because, see, they consider that to be a firearm that they use to kill varmint in their farms in rural America. And they're never going to include long guns into that because 18 not going to happen.
And in a democratic society, the majority rules, correct?
And the majority
so if you have to abide legislation for a long gun, I don't care if you're shooting squirrels with it. I don't give a damn.
No,
I don't care if you're shooting aluminum cans with it, and neither should the law. Neither should the law. Okay, because the will of the rural population should not be of driving matter in the lives of the urban population. Okay.
But
your ability to, but it should not.
That's why they got the
okay.
Wait.
And that's why we fight. That's why we fight. That's why we fight to craft legislation. Okay, so you got to take one more step so you can shoot squirrels. That's fine. Okay, but that one more step that you got to take to shoot squirrels may save hundreds of thousands of lives, simply because you got to go through another process. Okay. What happened?
Hello?
Okay, there you go. I lost y'all for a second.
Oh.
Okay. But yeah, the way it was explained to me, and I wholeheartedly believe it. If you take the word gun out of it, okay, and you think of it as your car or the tag on your car, you got to register your vehicle every so often by law. Okay, you got to have insurance on that vehicle. You got to prove your competency to use that vehicle. That vehicle is less dangerous than that gun.
RJ,
yes, sir.
All guns are registered that have serial numbers. Them being registered doesn't stop somebody from shooting anybody. Registration don't mean nothing. You understand? It doesn't mean anything. It's just that they can track where the gun came from, but it doesn't stop the person from shooting anybody.
No, but it's the other steps that you have to take in gun ownership when they are properly regulated that will help to prevent that. Here's one thing that's unmistakable. That is unmistakable. We had a ban on assault weapons in America.
Yes.
That ban on assault weapons was undoubtedly effective.
Yes.
We had 500%. That's not a stumble. 500% less mass shootings while that ban on assault rifles was in place.
And when the ban was lifted, you know how many guns were sold?
That's right. Why were they sold? Because that ban was lifted.
So
the gun manufacturers went into overdrive because their lobbied for that ban to be lifted.
There's no Peter Piper to get the guns out of the country. It's not gonna happen, right? So the legislation, however effective, once it was disbanded, hey man, you let the cat out the bag. They might do this again. Everybody bought guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
and
what legislation we think we could do? You say the collaborative effort, but the thing is that they can't pass anything, not one thing when it comes to legislation and guns federally. So that means that the idea of them changing multiple things is far
Okay.
fetched.
Oh, okay. You said one word right there that I'm going to disagree with.
Okay.
They can change gun legislation. They're unwilling to change gun legislation.
Okay. They're unwilling. My point was that they haven't.
Now, can they do something that's unpopular with the majority of the will of the people? Of course they can. Will they do something that's against the majority of the will of the people? Of course they can. We just had a shining example of that in Roe versus Wade. We just had a shining example of that in Roe versus Wade. That is a very, very unpopular opinion by the Supreme Court with that Supreme Court majority. So changing things, be it for or against the will of the people, it can be done. It's the willingness to do it. Okay. And I feel like if we get a majority and we end the filibuster and we go ahead and we correct the Supreme Court by law, there should be 13 Supreme Court justices, one to represent each federal district in this country. We have 13 federal districts. We have 9 Supreme Court justices.
You think you're gonna let Biden appoint 5 Supreme Court justices? You know they got to get past Congress, right?
It likely won't be Biden to choose.
Well, but either way, they got to get past Congress, right?
Yeah, they do.
And they never get past Congress.
How did the Republicans get a supermajority on the Supreme Court? By having the majority in Congress, correct?
No, by stealing it. Stealing it is what they
did. But they also were enabled. They were also enabled in that theft by having the majority in Congress.
No, it was the majority in Senate that did it, not the majority in Congress.
Well,
we had the majority in Congress.
When I'm talking Congress as it applies to the Supreme Court justices, I am speaking of the Senate. Okay, so the Senate had a majority and a majority leader that was willing to flout the tradition, flout the known standards,
the law,
and the law, okay, in order to stack the courts in their favor, okay. Now, in the famous words of I forget what basketball player, but I'm sure that Mitch McConnell stepped back after he did all that and said, "Who's gonna check me?" Because technically there was no one to do that. Now, the Democrats and the progressives have to have and adopt that same will going forward with legislating.
Or be crooked.
No, not be crooked, but be less concerned about what the Republicans are going to have to say about what they do for their constituents. Okay, I find it odd. I find it weird that just about every conversation or every speech you hear out of a Republican turns out to be projection. Okay, and I also would note that in having conversations on these topics with a lot of people, you will often hear folks that are against the Republican Party flout some of their talking points when discussing, what can and can't be done. Okay, and a lot of that can be attributed to what we now have for information on social media, because so much stuff flies back and forth. It's hard for people to ascertain what's the truth, because not many people are going to be willing to, check that through the Library of Congress, or let's run that through Google, even though Google is free, taking that extra step, most people are not going to do to find the truth. So, the other thing is we fight a lot of disinformation, and gun legislation is no different. Okay. First of all, we've gotten out of hand by a simple misinterpretation of the Second Amendment itself. Okay. Everyone owning firearms is not a well-regulated militia. Nope. It simply is not.
But we have the right, supposedly, to create a militia.
That's correct.
So
But
it's kind of like space.
Again, we hop right over those two words, and they are the most important words in the entire sentence. Well regulated. Okay. We should know who's got that firearm, where they live, how can they be contacted. A regulated militia means you need to be able to be mobilized at a moment's notice to take care of, let's say somebody attacks Florida from one of the coastlines, and you're a part of a well-regulated militia, and they contact you, and your job is to show up there and fight, much like the National Guard would do. Okay. Or if our governor decided that, you know, he was going to just turn dictator in the state of Florida, and the people in the state of Florida decide to rebel against that, you know, and the people had created a militia.
You mean like January 6th?
All right, I could see that scenario.
You mean like January 6th?
Well, they would call that. Okay, they would call it that. Okay, but that's a bit different. That is the true definition of insurgency. Okay, and though very close, they're not the same. Okay, though very close, they are not the same. Okay, so we can fight gun legislation or anything else. We can't look at things and say, well, you know, it's gotten so big that, you know, that's just what it is now. You know, we got to remember that at one point in time, our ancestors were brought over here on ships, and I'm sure once the realization of what their life was at the time, that they thought, or many of them thought, that this was it. This is what I'm resigned to. Okay. Thankfully, enough of them didn't and continued to fight. This might be my condition today. Now, I might not see the light at the end of the tunnel today, but I know I'm supposed to be having this fight. And I'm going to continue to have this fight until I see the light shine through a crack, even if it's somebody else that have to widen that crack to let the sun shine on in. You know what I mean? So, no matter how big that mountain is with gun legislation, that's one we got to move. You know, we can't just go around it. Because that particular mountain got fallen rocks. You know what I mean?
Brother,
so we got to fight that one.
I've enjoyed this conversation. We need to follow up. I hope to see you again next week or this week coming up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, man, it's getting kind of late, boy. I gotta get up in the morning. But yeah, hey man, I appreciate you brothers coming on, man. And like I said, man, but RJ, you more than welcome on Friday, bro. Cause I told you we do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, man.
Hey, anytime, brothers. It's refreshing,
it, RJ.
Yeah, it is definitely refreshing, man, to talk to brothers that are like-minded. You know, and what's the brother's name I was talking to there?
Strick. Yeah,
man. Strick, brother, I really appreciate the dissension, brother. Cause
likewise.
It opens up what we need to see. It opens up other avenues that we might not see.
That's what this is all about, man. It's about getting an open line of communication and us sharing information. But brother, I will see you Friday. Chat.
Yes, sir.
I'll holler at you later. All right. Y'all guys have a good night.
All right, brother.
Peace,
hey,
y'all
man,
brothers. Have a good night.
Good one, brother RJ.
Yes, sir. You too, fellas. Good night.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, Sexy Maid, Frankie, and Johnny. Appreciate everybody that came on the panel. We'll do this again on Friday. God bless everybody, man. And we'll see y'all again. All right. Take care.